7 o'clock.
We call the special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Monday, April 11th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber, as well as via Zoom teleconference. Prayer will be offered by Deputy City Clerk Allison Waite, and the pledge will be led by Alderman Klee.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with the spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please indicate if participating via Zoom. State why you're not meeting in person and whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Sullivan.
I'm here on Zoom as I'm traveling for business, and there was no one in the room with me.
Alderman Klee.
I am here.
Alderman Moran. Alderman Lopez. Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Camo.
Present.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Govia.
Here.
Alderman Kathy.
Present.
Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Alderwoman Timmons. Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here.
You have 11 in attendance and 1 via Zoom.
Thank you. Also with us this evening is Mayor Donchis. As is customary, I will turn the meeting over to the Chair of the Budget Review Committee, Alderman Dowd.
Yes, tonight we're having a public hearing on R22-022, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union, Local 1044 AFT, AFL-CIO, from September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2025, and authorizing a related transfer and supplemental appropriation. Is there anyone here to present the school department? Mr. Donovan, did you want to come up and? Yep, and Mr. Griffin? Okay, and also the mayor would like to speak first, and then we'll get into our two CFOs. Mayor?
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming to the public hearing, and I want to thank all of the people on all parties who worked so hard to achieve this contract over the last number of months. The school board and the teachers union devoted a lot of time. Ms. Kleiner was there representing the city with respect to health care. And the result through this collaboration is one that I feel is in the long-term interest of the city. And therefore, I wanted to speak to the contract and then turn to more of the details to Mr. Griffin and Mr. Donovan. But here in Nashua, we want to make sure that all children have access to an excellent education. Because I regard, and I think we all agree, that education here is a right, not a privilege. Young families look to us to provide their children a great education, and if we want young families in the future, that's what we need. Now, we have many great teachers, but we are losing teachers in the middle ranks, and we need to have competitive wages in order to retain the great teachers we have and to attract great teachers in the future. So this contract helps us to correct a situation in which Nashua is 77th, and I think you've all received those figures, 77th among all of the among the 150 or so school districts in New Hampshire. So even though we are the second largest district, We're 77th in terms of average teacher's pay, and that's according to the State of Education website and the statistics they have for every school district in New Hampshire. So the contract that you will be presented with raises teachers' pay and helps us correct the problem of losing middle-level teachers, as we have been doing, to other school districts after they're trained and seasoned by the Nashua School District. Teachers in the middle levels especially have been leaving for neighboring districts, Hollis, Amherst, and elsewhere, that pay more. So we need to approve this contract to right that situation. As you will hear, the contract grants 4.1% raises to teachers for 4 years, but there is a very significant change with respect to health care that will save the city in year 2 of the contract and every year after that into the future, $2.3 million a year in health care costs. Now, as we have discussed before, the city devised a reformed HMO plan in order to curb the rapid expenditure of health care costs. And for those groups that have adopted that reformed health care plan, we are already saving $1.3 million per year. But our teachers are our biggest employee group. And the agreement that they have made to adopt the reformed HMO plan, which they don't have to do, but they've agreed to it as part of this contract, will save the city, beginning in year 2, $2.3 million per year in healthcare costs. And for that, and in exchange, and as part of the deal, we are raising, as I mentioned, teachers' pay considerably to become more competitive with other districts. So you're going to hear these details and others from Mr. Griffin and Mr. Donovan, but again, I repeat that this contract, I believe, is in the best interest, long-term interest of the city, will make us more competitive, will help us retain and attract the great teachers that we need for the future of our young people, so they can have careers, not just jobs, and happy and successful family lives. So with that, Mr. Chair, I turn it over to Mr. Donovan. I guess maybe will lead, or Mr. Griffin, I'm not sure.
Before we go there, I noticed that Superintendent Garth McKinney is on. Did you want to have any words, Superintendent?
Thank you, Alderman Dowd, and thank you for your ongoing support with JSS BC and the work being done at the middle school project. No, I don't have any further comments related to the teacher's contract. Mr. Donovan's there to speak to the financials for the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan, did you want to?
Okay, so I'll speak to the contract as well as the resolution.
Yes.
Okay. All right, this is a 4-year contract, an average of 4.1%. It's the total dollars over the 4 years is $11,128,000. That's rounded. So there's increases of 4.47, 4.66, 4.42, and 2.84 respectively over the 4 years. What we did do with this contract was we moved the starting salaries up by over $3,000 for the bachelor's and the master's. So we were lower than most towns around here. We did a study of the contiguous towns and a few others. And this puts us up close to probably in second or third place for a starting salary at those 2 levels. The one negative in my mind with the grid is there are 24 steps in the grid. So the mayor did mention that an average salary, when you have an average salary and you have 24 steps, I'm not sure how much it's going to improve the average salary because you have 24 steps. Most grids have 16 or 17. But at least it is a step in the right direction. The other thing that we did with this contract is the nurses. The nurses were in just the bachelor's column. A teacher's grid has bachelor's plus 30, master's plus 30, PhD across the top, and then the year's experience down the left side. They were only in the bachelor's. We now have allowed them that if they have a degree in a related field to nursing or to medical, then they can move across. And we've also agreed to give a wider range of experience. The experience that they were granted before, they had to work with school-aged children. So we decided that if they were working in a hospital or a medical practice, that we would give them some of that experience. And one other thing, we did take the coaches, the athletic coaches' pay is out of the contract. It's really not a cost item because it's just going to move over to the operating budget outside of the contract. But it's no longer there, which gives us a little more flexibility as we move forward. And as the mayor mentioned, the union did agree to the changes in the medical plan. So those are pretty much what the financial amounts. As far as the reason for the resolution tonight, we did not have this, it's a total of $2.2,855,000. We did not have that in this year's budget, thus the supplemental appropriation. So the 1.3 million supplemental appropriation would make up the difference between what we have in this year's budget and what it would take to cover the cost of this contract.
Mr. Griffin, did you want to add anything?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. Just to expound on, Mr. Donovan and I partnered on this. It was pretty clear that we would need some additional funds. And fortunately, in the city, we have two pretty sizable areas we can draw from. One is called unassigned fund balance. That's kind of the remaining amount that is available for Board of Aldermen appropriations. That right now is 31.7 million as audited, effective June 30, 2021. Several years ago, as we grew the unassigned fund balance systematically, trying not to have significant increases and decreases as the years progressed, we were able to, from a financial perspective, create an assigned fund balance, and we aptly named it assigned fund balance for future liabilities, which I believe this is one of them. We had an eye towards unfunded pension liabilities, healthcare costs, et cetera. But when the mayor and Ms. Kleiner and Mr. Donovan asked me my opinion on how we should fund this, I think it's a pretty good use of unfunded liabilities going forward in the sense that it's a one-year fix, as Mr. Donovan has indicated. We need to add to the $1.3 million that was in contingency in negotiations to get to the 2.8. And as the mayor said, starting next year, we expect to save about $2.3 million in healthcare costs. So it's a nice balance. And we're supplementally increasing the budget, and that's why the public hearing is necessary. We looked at some other options, but this was the best one because we have planned for this, and not exactly planned for it in the sense that we know what we're going to use the funds for, but in this particular case, it's a good use of funds. And as you'll find, some of the newer, as you'll find as we go forward, we have a closing period. We might move some escrows forward. We identify surplus from appropriations not spent, revenue over budget. We work together on or around September to set the tax rate from the Board of Aldermen's perspective. So this is a good use of the funding, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
So before I open it up to clarifying questions to the people that just spoke, we're not going to debate anything with them. We're just going to have clarifying questions. Also, for tonight's meetings and tomorrow night's meetings, as with any board sending a contract before us, we cannot renegotiate the contract. So the only thing you can do in the end is vote it up, vote it down, based on what you feel as far as the contract. So right now, I'll open it up to any.
1 second.
Sure.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to welcome Alderman Lopez, who joined the meeting at 7:04. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so clarifying questions, Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. And thank you for working so hard on this contract. I know it's been a topic of conversation in the city, and it's really important, so I appreciate all of your hard work. My one question was just to clarify for everybody who's listening. So this year, we were appropriating 1.3 from our budget, but next year you would be able to cover it with the school budget, correct?
Yes, we've included the increase in the budget that will come forward to this board in the next couple of months.
Perfect.
That increase will be included in there.
Thank you.
Alderman Lopez?
So if I understood the description from CFO, Treasurer, Mr. Griffin, sorry. I had to focus hard enough on just the financial part. That's not my wheelhouse. But you were saying that that we were deriving the funds from unassigned, unspent funds, unused revenue that was part of last year's budget, but ultimately hasn't been used yet, or were in areas that maybe more money came in, but that this is a supplement to that. Does this represent any new revenue or expansion of that budget, or not? And are there any implications for managing the spending, or the spending cap from last year? Are we like undoing anything that we shouldn't undo?
Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, good questions. What you're doing with this particular item is you're increasing the fiscal '22 budget by 1.3 million. Totally appropriate, requires board approval because the money is ready for appropriation. With regard to the spending cap, as many of you know, we're working on that right now. And we will definitely articulate clearly what that reinstatement of the spending cap is. But for this purpose, there's not a lot of worry or issue. As a matter of fact, over the course of this particular fiscal year, we've had a number of supplemental appropriations. The bonding activity, capital projects that you're adding to the budget because through your approval, you're authorizing spend. So this wouldn't, I wouldn't worry about this particular move or approval for the 1.3 of fund balance to provide the necessary funding for the contract.
All set, Alderman Lopez?
I mean, you said not to worry, so I don't gotta worry.
Don't worry.
Alderman Kathy, and then Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of piggyback off of Alderman Lopez's question, just so I understand it more clearly. This 1.3 is hitting the budget right now, this year, but we have this money over here, sitting here, and we're just gonna take that and put it here. Was there anything else that money was gonna be spent on that this appropriation would then affect, or is that just sort of like we didn't spend it and so we're gonna spend it on this?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Griffin?
So unassigned fund balance for cities such as us and maybe towns, it directly affects the ratings that the rating agencies give us. Unfortunately, we have 2 AAAs and 1 A1 with Moody's, but it's grown over the years with, and what we're known for is good budgeting conservatively, not overextending. So if you look at it this way, the 31.7 million, that's really unassigned fund balance, meaning that's a good value as a comparison to our operating budget, so it's about 11%. The unassigned fund balance, which we haven't had to use, we try to use that strategically, but that is similar to the unassigned, although we've assigned it. I, as the CFO, have assigned it. So when the rating agencies look at our financials, they know that it's for a purpose. Unassigned, it can be used for any purpose deemed appropriate by the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly, one final point, when we get into the budget process, we can get more into this.
Yeah, I have lots of questions, but I'll wait.
Thank you.
Yes, Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions are around the benefit costs specifically. And when the mayor spoke, and what I've heard is that there are about $2.3 million in savings each year of the contract. I see a drop of about, I'll round up a little bit, 1.2 million in year 2 of the contract, but then it goes up to 858,000 and then up again in year 4 to 908,000. There is some language in there about assuming a 6% increase for the remainder of the contract, but I'm wondering if you could just help me understand that a little bit more, because I'm not seeing a $2.3 million drop. And then by year 4, it's equal to what we're paying in year 1 of the contract. Thank you.
Mr. Griffin, or anyone want to address this? Or
I could address it, Mr. Chairman. What's interesting about healthcare is what you're trying to do is mitigate the increases to the best extent possible. So when we move from the teachers going from a low deductible program, HMO low deductible, to a high deductible HMO, that's going to save $2.3 million. The issue that we have with United States Healthcare is that the costs keep going up. So what we did in the costing was we applied the 2.3 million savings offset by the increase. And what happens is you've kind of embedded that cost savings because the program is going, the teachers will still enjoy the health care that's going to have a high deductible HMO. But the costs are going up, so you're not, the 2.3 million savings is embedded in the future structure of the healthcare. We've got to come up with other ways of bending that cost curve, they call it. It's a big challenge in the United States to provide meaningful health care to folks. But you're not going to see, Alderman Sullivan, a $2.3 million reduction every year, unfortunately. You're going to see increases. But if we picture, the good news, as the mayor said, we've reformed that HMO from a 250, 500 program to a 1,500, 3,000. There's a companion HSA, which is a high deductible health savings account where the city contributes a certain amount to the subscriber, that they have a real active participation in the health care. But we put that in this, if the teachers had not, as the mayor says, gone along with this program, the cost would be 6% a year, 6 to 7% a year every year. So you're seeing that reduction in year 1 that carries forward to year 2 that carries forward to 3 and 4 in future contracts.
And could I answer that a little
Yes.
further?
Yeah, Mayor?
So what Alderman Sullivan is pointing out is that year 1 of the contract healthcare costs are 19 million roughly, and they drop to 17.5 in year 2 of the contract. This is projected. But that number in year 2 would be not 17.5, but it would be like 19.8 million in year 2 of the contract were the healthcare change not agreed to. Then in year 3, the projected cost is 18,500,000, again, lower than in year 1 of the contract still, but without the agreement on healthcare, that would be 20,800,000. And in year 3 of the contract, we come back up to $19 million for the first time, 19.6, but that would then be about $22 million in year 3 of the contract. So we are in an environment now, again, of rising healthcare costs, but through the agreement on healthcare, we've been able to basically hold healthcare either lower or up, and then in year 3, approximately the same as year one, despite the fact that healthcare costs are rising at 6 or 7% a year.
All set, Alderman Sullivan?
Yeah, I think that my math was just a little off. I had 20,433,000 in year four. I'm not gonna dilly-dally over the details, but I understand that now once I plot it all out here. But thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
No problem. Alderman Clee?
I don't actually have a question now. Both of the mayor and Mr. Griffin did answer my question, and I want to thank the negotiations for coming into this healthcare program, because I think it's a good plan, and while I don't realize it on paper, it would have increased by much more, so thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Alderman Kathy?
I apologize. Alderman Sullivan triggered my brain a little bit. This is more of a curiosity question. I know with the HSA, because I have an HSA, which are great, we contribute some of the cost into the HSA, or not cost, but we give them some of the money into the HSA fund. Was there any talk in negotiations about if things were to trend more inflationary, if we would want to give the teachers more over time, increase that number for their HSA? If there's inflation, their dollars are worth less, and then the HSA is worth less. Was there any conversation about that in the future, or?
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't part of any of those discussions, so I wouldn't be able to answer.
Would you like to bring Ms. Kleiner up?
Good evening, Kim Kleiner, Director of Administrative Services. So there wasn't, to answer your question, any discussion. Our HSA health savings account plan is crafted in a way where the city's contribution is worked into our working rates for that plan. It's across the board, $1,500 single, $3,000 for a two-person or a family. In order to offer that to any group, we would have to look at offering that to the entire population because it is in plan design.
Oh, okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to open up the public hearing. I'm going to open it up first for people testifying in favor, and then people in opposition. Then again, testimony in favor, and then again, testimony in opposition. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Adam Marcoux. I live at 4 Delory Lane. I'm president of the Nashua Teachers Union. I have 2 children in the Nashua School District and one that starts kindergarten in the fall. Goodbye, daycare. These negotiations for the union started in 2019. The goal at that time was to have this contract done and ratified prior to expiration, which we haven't done with the teacher's contract or any other of our contracts since 2011. Then COVID struck and shut down everything and delayed our progress. So this has been a long time negotiating this contract with the city in the school district. The contract was ratified by the membership with 98% of those attending the meeting approving the contract. We've spent a considerable amount of time educating the membership about the changes to health insurance, because when you hear a high deductible plan, people panic. But the new plan with the HMO and the added HGHP with HSA plan is not as scary as you think once you talk about it. And I'd like to thank Ms. Kleiner and the people from, where is he from? WBS, for taking time to meet with our members to explain things and have meetings about the health insurance changes. We were concerned that that might hold up the contract in negotiations and with the membership. But we worked through that with the school district and we had a successful ratification. Our teachers have worked their tails off in a normal year. And over the last 2 years have done exceptional things during exceptional times. And this contract recognizes that work. And as Mr. Donovan mentioned, the downside of this contract is there's 24 steps. We had a contract at one point with 9 steps, and then things have changed over time. What this contract does do is address the concerns at the bottom of the schedule for our new people, our current people in the middle, and also recognizes the longevity of our faculty at the top. There is always work to be done on contracts. There is always work to be done on salary schedules. I think our next big project, Mr. Donovan, is to look at how we do that with cutting some of those steps. We did a lot of great work making it more predictable and equitable steps from 0 to 24, which was a goal at the end of last contract for those of you who recall that negotiations. So I'd like to ask for your support in the appropriations of the extra funding and your support to approve this contract when it comes to budget and to your full board tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you. I have someone on Zoom speak. This is in favor. Sonia Prince. You're on mute.
Hi, Sonia Prince, 49 Tufts Drive, Nashua. I have a student at Nashua North, and I'm definitely thinking this contract is more than fair. 1.5 years, you don't see the firefighters going through that, you don't see the police department going through that. And I have to notice they're male-dominant areas of our contracts, and for some reason, the teachers always get dragged around longer and disrespected in my view. So I feel that's a lot of sexism going on there, but that's for a whole other day. If you guys pass this and accept this, this would be wonderful. The teachers have made their concessions through healthcare. Like Mr. Marcoux said, it's not fun to pay a higher deductible, but hopefully with the other plans they have in place, we'll make up for it. I'm hopeful. And being more competitive. We're closer to Massachusetts, so it's not fair that, you know, we lose all our teachers and we're 77th on the pay scale. So this would make us more competitive, which I totally agree with. Yeah, that's it, I guess. I hope you accept the contract and it passes. The teachers deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to alternate. Is there anybody in the chamber that would like to speak in favor of the contract? In favor? Yeah.
Cam McGurk, I live at 72 Charlotte Street in Nashua. I'd like to speak to 3 issues that I think your constituents bring up as issues of concern. Increase in property taxes when we have a new teacher contract. I've been a homeowner in Nashua since 1969. In fact, I've owned 6 homes in Nashua, 3 single-family homes and 3 multi-unit dwellings. So as both a homeowner and a landlord, I'm quite aware of what happens when we have anything that increases our tax rate. The second thing I'd like to speak to is the myth that constituents talk about that senior citizens are losing their homes because of tax increases. Well, folks, I am a super senior citizen, so I investigated this, and I know for a fact that that is a myth. That luckily we live in a city that is kinder than that, and no one has their home snatched away from them, that our city figures out how senior citizens who are in difficulty can stay in their home. And the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that I am in my 54th year as an employee of the Nashua School District. My initial salary was $5,600 in 1968, and in this contract, I won't even break $80,000. I'm a professional with 2 graduate degrees, and I could work any place as a speech-language pathologist and make far more than I make here. But as a homeowner and a longtime resident, I'm committed to this community. I want young people to come and replace people like me. I want our schools to be full of citizens who want the best for their children. It is sad and depressing that in my position as head speech-language pathologist, I'm out there trying to recruit people And while I agree that this contract is the best we could do at this time, it is absolutely not competitive. Tomorrow, I will be interviewing somebody, and I cannot tell you the things that I say to new candidates. You're willing to come down from the University of Maine in Orono to interview with me? I'll pay your gas money. I'll take you to lunch. My boss said, maybe we should put him up in a hotel. I thought to myself, I have a guest room. I know it's comical and we
30
laugh
seconds.
about it, but we have absolutely no competitive standing when people can work any place else and make more money with less issues. We are, for New Hampshire, an urban district. As somebody who grew up in Cambridge, I love the changes in our community, but we have not kept pace with making it an attractive place for young people coming out of universities with a degree. I talk to
Your time is
my
up.
time
We
is
gotta
up.
stick to
We
the-
need to pass this contract and think of it as the basic of what we can do for teachers. Thank you. Point of order.
Yes.
This is a public comment period, a public hearing, which is different than a public comment period.
Right.
So the 3 minutes doesn't apply.
Yes, on Zoom, I have Lou J.
Good evening. Hi, Lou Jarris here at 56 Haines Street. And Ward 7, we've got a student at the high school at North, and a recent graduate who was attending Assumption College down in Worcester. And this has been a road. It's been a road the past couple of years for our instructors, our professionals at the school system. Between the pandemic, hybrid learning, remote, managing and dealing with the virus in the schools, the panic, and checking up on students' emotional health and well-being. As a matter of fact, they even did a parade at that first year when the pandemic struck and the students had to stay home. It's been a long contract negotiation. There's been a lot of talk. There's been contentious BOE meetings, unfortunate ones, I believe. And this is a glimmer here, a ray of hope that we can move forward and we can put our teachers, our instructors, and our associated professionals on the right path, and a path that makes us competitive with the states around us, well, at least the towns and cities around us, whether they're in Mass or in Maine, in addition to the other localities. So there was some negotiation. There was certainly some concessions. The healthcare being what you all just discussed, and how that's going to end up affecting the budgets going forward, and the CFOs did a good job, the negotiators, the people with the city, and the teachers union. So please consider this carefully, and let's all give it a thumbs up tomorrow. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else testimony in favor in the chamber?
Gary Hoffman, 38 Perham Street. I rise in favor of this collective bargaining agreement. I've been a teacher in the city of Nashua for 19 years. I live in Ward 3, Trisclees Ward, and I got to say, the past 2 years have been very, very difficult. This is the first year I've ever taught where we've had this many open positions. It was a little scary in the beginning of the school year because we were down a lot of positions in my school. I know at the other schools, they were down a lot of positions. The high school is still down several teaching positions. A lot of, it's not like it was 15 years ago. People aren't going into education as a profession as they used to. And I got to tell you, my first year teaching in 2003, when I came in, almost everybody at my school, it seemed like, was a 20, 25, 30, 40-year veteran. And and after this year, in the 8th grade, I'm going to be the old man of the 8th grade with only, 19 years in. And I'm trying to convince some of these newer teachers to stick around, and a lot of them are looking and they're saying, I don't know if I want to stay. This contract gives them a ray of hope. and I really urge you to pass this contract so we can really think about moving forward and look at not only attracting new teachers, but retaining some of the ones that are already here. So thank you, Mr. Dowd, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your kind words in the beginning.
Can we turn that device off?
Yeah, I did.
Anyone else in testimony in favor? Seeing no one and no one on Zoom. Testimony in opposition?
I have a question to bring up.
Please wait till you get to the microphone. Name and address for the record.
Yeah. My name is Ernest Duvani Jr. I'm at 198 Knollwood Ave, next to the highway. One thing, I sent an email to a number of you and my Ward 6 alderman also, but I never received a reply. My concern is recession, which is being talked about a lot, where some of the experts are saying we are actually entering one. And my concern is, how does that affect us, and is there any consideration to that? My initial reaction to it is, if I was a mayor, I would be committing to a one-year contract, well, the 4 years, with a one-year defined raise and all that stuff, and a review after the year based on what they're saying. At that point, we should be in it significantly, very, there is one individual that was asked this question, what do you think? And he said, yes, and I can give you his name if you'd like. I have it written down. He was also followed up with a follow-up question. Well, how sure are you of this? And he said 100%. This is the individual that was the economic advisor for President Trump. This is what he's saying. There are others that are saying the same thing. So my concern is the thoughts of, okay, if this is going to happen, where does it put us? Where does it put the teachers? Where does it put the homeowners that are paying the bill? That's the point I want to make, to have people think about in their decision.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
Anyone else in opposition? Seeing no one, once again, testimony in favor. Not seeing anyone, once again, testimony in opposition. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at 7:42 p.m. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that the April 11th, 2022 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned by roll call.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Camo.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Govia.
Yes.
Alderman Kathy.
Yes.
Alderman Tebow.
Yes.
And Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 13 yeas and 0 nays.
We're adjourned at 7:43 p.m. and we'll go right into budget.
Do you want to move your nameplate? Huh? Do you want to move your nameplate? Dowd. What's just empty anyways?
You can't make it.
Actually, they weren't involved.
Yes.
They'll probably
Come tomorrow, 2, 3, 4, still on.
All right, I'd like to like to call the Special Budget Review Committee to order on April 11th, 2022. The meeting is in the Aldermanic Chamber on Canal Street, and it can also be accessed by Zoom.
We're not on Canal
Any-
Street.
What?
You said Canal Street.
Did I say Canal Street?
You did.
You did.
Too much work for BAE.
We are not at BAE right now.
Elm Street. All right, and it's 7:45 PM. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire,
Here?
Alderman John Sullivan,
I'm here on Zoom as I'm traveling for business and I'm alone in the room.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly,
I'm here.
Alderman Ernest Jettie,
Here.
Alderman John Cathy,
Present.
Alderman at Large Michael B. O'Brien Senior is here, and our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present. We
got
have a
full quorum.
full quorum. We do have one person on Zoom, so motions will be by roll call. Public comment? Is there anyone that would like to speak in public comment on what's on the agenda? I think that
Good evening. My name is Amy McKay at 5 Bennington Road. I'm the president of Nashua Theater Guild, and I'm here tonight representing several arts organizations, and you'll hear from them tonight.
I don't want to stop you, but
Yep.
this public comment period is only for things on the agenda. That's not on our agenda this evening.
I believe it is.
It is on the agenda.
It's not tabled unless it's
Retreat
removed.
Trust Fund.
It's been tabled already once,
All right,
on
we'll
the
let-
6th,
We'll
so.
let you speak.
I think it was a
Okay, if not, we'll come again, but keep coming. Okay, so addressing this issue tonight, we're speaking about the account for Court Street Theater, and we are in favor of forming this account. We've heard lots of feedback about this, so let me just give you 5 seconds of who we are. We're your local community theater for the past 62 years. We reside mostly in Court Street Theater. We also use several other buildings in the area. We have been engaging with many different people. Actually, I believe Alderman Dowd, you've been part of Actor Singers in the past.
A few
and-
years.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have lots of other community engagement where we pull people from several of the different communities around into Nashua. In the past, there has been a previous account, and this was before I came to Nashua. I've only been a resident for about 6 years, but the story has gone that 10 to 15 years ago, there was a fund set up for Court Street Theater where every time a theater organization came and rented out the building, they would give a certain amount, let's call it $200. I don't know what the amount was, every time they did a show, with the idea that that money would go straight back into revitalizing the building. The building has always needed a little bit of extra love throughout the years, and the thought continued, and this process continued for, I believe, 10 years. When it came to needing the repairs for the building, the carpet being worn, obviously we know that there were no sprinklers at the time, the roof leaking, the wallpaper coming off of the wall, and many other things, exposed subfloor, et cetera, the money wasn't there. The explanation was that the money had gone back into the general fund, and unfortunately, there was no more money for the theater. You can imagine people who have donated, with the idea that the money would go to a certain organization in a certain building, felt very frustrated about this. At the time, and as I said, I wasn't there, but the arts community was very frustrated with this, and they were frustrated with the city. So, to explain, having a specific fund for this would not only allow them to donate specifically for, recarpeting the lobby or whatever other things the building needs, as you know, many things, that would really help the community not only to donate specifically.
30 seconds.
Thank you, but also to give them something to rally against. I know that we've invested a lot into the building recently. We've regraded the sculpture yard and added many sculptures. We've done the roof, we've done the sprinklers. We still have a lot more to do, and we would really appreciate your help because I know that you guys have our interest at heart. So thank you very much for hearing us tonight.
Okay, any other public comment? Seeing none, communications,
There are none?
unfinished business,
None.
new business resolutions?
There is none?
New business ordinances?
There is none.
Okay, I would like to, if there's no objection, move to address R 22-022 and come back to see if we want to take R 22-008 off the table.
Okay.
Seeing no objection, Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before us this evening is R-22-022, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the National Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union Local 1044, AFT-AFL-CIO, from September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2025, and authorizing a related transfer and supplemental appropriation. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
The motion is to recommend final passage of R 22-022. Discussion? Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. I'm going to start off by saying I'm going to support this. I think it's been a long time coming, and that the negotiating team has done their due diligence in bringing something forward that's fair for the city. I had a couple of questions that I'm disappointed that the mayor has left. One of the things he said in his comments was that we've had this issue where people come here, they start their career here, and then they leave. So I was sort of interested in how we bumped up first-year pay, but the middle of the road doesn't seem like it's really competitive. So is it really going to solve that problem of people coming here and then leaving for other greener pastures?
We can address that question, but remember, we can't renegotiate the
I
contract.
know. I'm just asking because I think it's something that we've talked about for a long time in the city. So I agree with you. We need to pass this, but I'm just asking for future
Donovan, do you
reference.
want to shed some light on that question, or?
Well, I guess if the teacher, let's say, had taught here for 8 or 9 years and was leaving to make more money in another district in the area, if that opportunity still exists, then that person still may do that. This, like I said, this contract, the starting point and the ending points are fine. I don't think anyone's going to be leaving, not coming for the start or leaving for the top. But like I said, with 24 steps, you may get, in Hollis, let's say, if they have 16 steps, you may get there quicker. You will get there quicker. So would they still leave? Possibly.
Second question you have?
I'm good.
You're good?
Thank you for indulging me.
Any other questions? Concerns? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this might help with Alderwoman Kelly's question, but I did an analysis of 3 levels of teachers. There's a new teacher, year 1 versus year 4 of the contract, and they get a 7.4% increase. The middle year teachers looks to get about an 11.4% bump in pay over the 4 years, and then a veteran teacher falls into more of the first year teacher, a 7% salary increase over the 4 years. So there is, it seems as though teachers that have been here for a while, they seem to get a higher salary increase. That's based on my math from what I could tell from the steps. So I hope that helps clarify it from my analysis of the contract.
Thank you, Alderman Sullivan. Alderman Kathy, and then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I ask this question, I just want to state that I grew up in a single-parent home, and my mom was a teacher for a very long time, so my life very much depended on teachers' contracts being approved. My question would be, when I have constituents sort of ask questions about teachers' salaries and budgets and the education budget, some of them are frustrated, and it's an area that I'm not super familiar with. So I guess the question I'd want to know is, what were the concessions that were made with this contract that we might not know about because we weren't in the room? That might be helpful to sort of give context and round out this contract negotiation.
Mr. Donovan, within the confines of what you can say based on the things that happen in negotiations that may not be non-public, you can answer the question.
Right, yeah.
Well, the main concession was the insurance. As far as dollars and cents, that was probably the only concession. There were other items in the agreement that were non-financial, but to be honest with you, this contract really was about the salary grid and the insurance. We spent most of our time in those areas. The other contracts I've been involved with had a lot more language around other things. So there are a few things in there. There's the ability for teachers to use some of the tuition funding to take individual training courses as opposed to taking a course at a college towards a degree. And there was some changing in the planning time, which I'm not an expert on, so I don't want to speak to very much. So there were a few other things, but if you look at the contract itself, the red line contract, you'll notice there aren't a significant amount of changes.
Right. Can I have one follow-up?
Follow-up question?
Yeah. Was the healthcare plan change, was that well received right out of the gate? Or did that was that more tricky?
Well received by the union?
Yeah.
They would probably have to answer that question. I
didn't know if it took, I was just curious if it took like a lot of back and forth before we changed, because I feel like what I've heard is all positive, so I wasn't sure if that was one of the easier things to get through, rather than just financial salary negotiations.
Well, we didn't have a lot of flexibility with it. Keep in mind, it's, the city does all the planning for the medical plans, so it was, here's the plan, here's how we hope to change it.
I think all the unions have recognized that accepting the new health insurance is a win-win for both sides. And if you notice the patrolman's contract, I believe you all got.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They have also agreed to the healthcare changes. So, and the other thing, just, I've been involved in numerous teacher negotiations, as a lot of people in the audience know. And we used to start with a list from the union that was maybe 20, 30 or more items, and the Board of Education would have another list of items, and then they'd see how many things matched up, and they used to work their way down. I think in this negotiation, from what I understand from the outside, not being privy to any of it, that there were probably less things discussed.
Thank you.
I think I had Alderman Lopez first, and then Alderman Jenny.
So, I mean, to that previous point, I can't imagine it was easy to talk about how to manage healthcare during a pandemic, which is when this contract was stalled. I think we're all a little more conscious of healthcare and healthcare costs and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate the teachers union and the teachers in it being flexible enough to look at the situation and understand that the city does have its priorities, while also recognizing that education is the city's priority. We talk about the impact that paying teachers might have on tax revenue. We also have to talk about the impact that a quality education has on property values. We keep getting cited as number 1, 2, or whatever best in different scores, and they always consider what your education, what your school systems are. And that's not easy to do in the state of New Hampshire, where we have a very unique funding mechanism for education. To the point earlier where we were talking, Alderman Kelly was pointing out that how do we keep teachers in the intermediate? I would imagine that the initial goal would be to try to attract teachers in the first place as they're starting to begin their careers. But there are a lot of teachers who, the mayor referred to it as a career rather than a job. I'd take it one step further and say, for many teachers, it's a calling where they're not just in it for the money, they're not just in it for the identity of being a teacher. They want to educate and they want to inspire kids, and that's where they draw their satisfaction to get up every morning. That's who they want to be. And people like that will make a lot of concessions in some areas, they won't in others. So knowing, as Chairman Dowd pointed out, we can't exactly renegotiate the contract that's been cooking for 2 years now in the chamber, we should be mindful as aldermen that burnout comes from a lot of different directions. And part of that is making sure that people who feel they have a calling and are genuinely trying to teach the children and connect with them need the resources to do that. We need to make sure that our schools are being maintained. We need to make sure that we have adequate staff. And that's as challenging as it's ever been. Coming back out of the pandemic, a lot of people reevaluated their careers. A lot of people took different paths. A lot of opportunities opened. And in a very unfortunate way, because COVID-19 was not without its cost. But people found other things to do, other callings. And if we want to get people to educate our next generation, we need to attract them when they're in school, when they're coming out of school and they're looking for a place to connect. But then we need to keep them by supporting teachers in more ways than just the every couple of years contract rates in the context of healthcare issues and the city budget. We need to be supportive of our teachers. We need to be understanding as politicians particularly, that they know their craft and that they are in it all day, every day, whereas we may kind of visit the school periodically, depending on whether we have kids in it, or tune into what's going on, you know, from the ears of a child. We have to be supportive of teachers. We have to be supportive of our educators. I think that is as helpful as the contract negotiations. As was stated in public comment, this is going to keep the conversation going. It's going to keep our teachers coming back and make us a little more competitive. But as aldermen, we really have to look at how we budget for the school ourselves in the context of a state that won't. Either we have good schools because we make them a priority, or we don't because nobody else will do it for us. Thank you.
Alderman Jettie, then I'll call on Alderman Timo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've long been under the impression that that our teachers are not well paid, and I appreciate the mayor's pointing out that we rank 77th in average teachers' pay in New Hampshire. I think that, I agree with the mayor that probably the most single asset, most important asset that the city has is a good school system, and that doesn't depend on the buildings. No offense to you, Chairman of the Joint School Building Committee, but it depends on the people who are the teachers, the people who are teaching our kids. And so I know that the union, the teachers union, and the school board has spent a long time negotiating this, and I applaud them for coming to a resolution. So I'm going to support the teachers and the school board by voting in favor of this. But I do have a question, if I could. I don't know if anyone can answer this, but after we adopt this, if the full board adopts this, where will that put us in this rankings? We're 77th now. Where will we be after? I know it's a moving target, but does anyone know where this will put us in the future?
I'm not sure anybody calculated that.
And he
Mr.
said,
Donovan?
the mayor said in his thing, second or third, right?
Ooh, no, not even close.
That's what I thought he said. I was like, whoa.
It's not easy to manage.
No, well, it's a difficult calculation. I mean, the calculation isn't difficult, but for example, one of the districts that's way up high is Newcastle. They have 7 teachers. Okay, so when you take this, you really should take apart the very small districts and take a look at it. But as Alderman Jettie said, it is an ever-moving target. We did actually take a look and said, if in year 3, everything else stayed the same somewhere else, we would have moved to, I think, 32nd or something. But other districts are changing at the same time. So It's a difficult number to calculate. You have to do it at maybe any given point in time, but each year that can change.
The one thing I noticed that every other major city in New Hampshire is above us. Any other questions? Oh, Alderman Tebow, almost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would agree that we would have to probably do that by the cities as opposed to doing it by every district in the state. You know, I just have a few comments. I'm not part of this committee, but I'll be voting on this tomorrow night. You know, I've come to Board of Education meetings, and I spoke at both the Board of Education and here about this contract being settled. It took way too long. There is a war on public education. There's a war on teachers in public education. And, you know, not paying them, you know, the going rate, it does not help our situation in this city. It's important to have good teachers. We have good teachers in the city and we need to keep them. There's too many people speaking out against public education as a bad thing, and it's not. It's the best thing. You know, I've gone through all the public education. My kids have gone through public education. And still are going through it. I will be supporting this because it's important, and it took too long. I would reject this if I could make it better, to be honest, but we don't have the time to do that. I know Mr. Marcoux does not want to hear that. So I will be supporting it, but you know, the grade levels, I've been in a lot of businesses, the grade levels are way too many. That's just, it's crazy to me, but we have to keep good teachers. Huge supporter of our public education, and I wish people would stop trying to attack it and trying to tear it down in this country and in this state. And thank you for the teachers, they do a great job, and thank you for the union for getting this done, and the BOE, even though I chastised them a couple of times. Thank you for finally negotiating to this point, and like I said, I'll be supporting it.
Any other comment? Alderman Wiltshire.
Thank you. I will be supporting this contract. I think it's so important to take care of the teachers and keep the teachers that we have and attract good young teachers. I know that I was reading an article the other day about how private industry is trying to attract teachers because of their skills. You know, they're organized, they're all those things that it takes to be a teacher. That private industry is going after teachers, right? They want them. And so we've got to do better. We've always got to do better. And so for that reason, I'll be supporting this contract.
Alderman Cleen.
Yes, I was one of the ones that shushed you, so that don't give anybody ideas. We need these teachers to stay with us. And to Alderman Tebow's point, and even to, I believe it was Alderman Cathy. First off, when I look at this chart of where the standings are, and I think to maybe to Alderman Jetty's point too, Manchester's at 69 and Concord's at 9. So we're still far below two of the major cities that kind of surround us as being the #2 city in the state. We're still far below them. And when I look at what the base salaries of somebody starting and knowing, yeah, maybe they're young, they're out of college, that's still a low salary when you consider how much it costs to live in Nashua. Even at the low end of it. More than likely, every teacher, if they don't have a second salary coming in, will have to have a second job. And, you know, I want our teachers to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for those students who are going to test them to their limits. And knowing that they have to possibly have to have a second job just so that they can live in this city, or even the surrounding cities, breaks my heart. I think this is a good contract. To Alderman Tebow's point, yes, I'd like to see it better, but I would never ask you to negotiate. And tomorrow I will be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Clements?
Thank you. Just a brief point. My wife is a teacher in Windham, New Hampshire. My father was a teacher for years. I come from a long background of people in the education business, and I call it a business because the product is our future. And it's important that we understand that in order to have a future that's worth looking forward to, we need to invest in that product, and that's our students, and we need to do it via our teachers. So For all of those reasons, I will be supporting the contract. I'm very happy that the school board and the union were able to come to an agreement, and I will be supporting this tomorrow.
Thank you. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to give a point of clarity. Unfortunately, I won't be able to vote for this. I'll have to abstain, and the reason is my daughter is a school nurse. Now, the thing is, she's quite an independent young lady, does not live at home, has no financial ties to me. The only thing I get off of her is maybe a birthday card, a Father's Day card, maybe a tie and a shirt, and of course something for Christmas too, but also the joy of my grandchildren. But because of that, I cannot vote. But if I could vote, boy, would I. Because I'll tell you why. I had the pleasure of serving 7 years, wasn't it, Gary, as a substitute teacher at Fairgrounds Middle School. I got a whopping $60 a day. You couldn't have so much fun for that amount of money. But I tell you, the lessons that I learned from the kids, the lessons I learned from the teachers. I used to say, let's educate before we have to incarcerate. It's great when we put everybody through Harvard, but I don't think everybody's going to Harvard. But we can have dedicated teachers, and we have them. I've seen teachers bring stuff in from their own pocket into the classroom to decorate classrooms, to do certain things, to make an environment that is healthy for learning. That doesn't come from the city budget. So therefore, unfortunately, I'm going to have to abstain. Education's big in my family. I'm sure Cam knows my wife Diane, who worked with special needs children for 18 years, you know. And so therefore, unfortunately, I can't, but I'll move on from that. But if I could, I would, and I urge you all to do so. Thank you.
Any other? Alderman Wiltshire?
Just one thing. One of the speakers who got up and said, I've worked for the school district for 54 years, and I make $80,000. I'm sorry.
I don't even make that yet.
Oh.
But thank you.
That's just, thank you.
And she lives in a great ward.
She used to live in a better one.
All right. If there's no other questions, would you call the roll, please?
Alderman Elijah Lowry Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan,
Yes.
Alderwoman at large Shoshana Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy,
Yes.
Alderman at large Michael B. O'Brien is going to abstain. Chairman Richard A. Dowd.
Yes.
That is 6 yeas and 1 abstention.
Motion carries, and it'll be on the Board of Aldermen meeting tomorrow night. And before I ask if anybody wants to take this item from the table. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that would rather be home watching something else. You can leave.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can stay if you want, but. All right. Is there a motion to take our 20, hang on, the right glasses.
2208.
Is there a motion to take our 2208 from the table? Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make the motion to remove from the table 22-022. And, no, I read the, sorry, on the
That's
script,
the
it
one
was the
we
wrong one.
Yeah.
It's R22-008.
All right,
And may I speak to my motion?
sure.
No, I think I'll yield, and let's take it off the table, and then we can have a
Yeah,
discussion.
it's really not debatable, so.
You're right, thank you.
Would you call the roll?
Alderman Elijah Lowry Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan,
Yes.
Alderwoman Elijah Shoshana Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy,
Yes.
Alderman at-large Michael O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized for another motion? I'll yield to Alderman Clemmons.
Alderman Clemmons.
Well, did you want to make your motion and then I
Right,
can?
because he's not on the committee, right?
It's your bill, I'll let you.
Okay. Thank you. First, I just want
Want to
to,
make a motion
motion.
to recommend final approval to the full Board of Aldermen? I assume
Yes.
you did.
I do. I'm not on the committee, although as the maker.
Oh, okay,
So-
then I will. Mr. Chairman, I would like to be recognized for a motion.
Yes.
And my motion would be for final passage of R22-008, and I'll yield to Alderman Clemmons.
Yeah, just so you know, when you're not a member of the committee, you can ask a member of the committee to make a motion. But go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. And first off, I want to just, I want to thank the public and the committee for being patient with me, because this has been tried to come up 2 times, and the last 2 times that it has tried to come up, I have had family emergencies that, one was unfortunately a death in the family. So I appreciate the patience of the committee and of the public, and I appreciate the chairman taking this up this evening as well. With that said, when this came back to committee because there was some questions, and when it was originally brought forward, I had not had the opportunity to speak. Again, that was one of those emergency personal things. So I wanted to kind of just go through why I brought this legislation forward. So what this intends to do is to create a trust fund for Court Street. Court Street, the building itself receives several different forms of income that come into it. It receives rent, it receives money from taxes, and it receives money from events. So there are 3 different types of revenue stream that come through that building. And so what the expendable trust fund would do is 2 main things, and then there's 1 ancillary thing. The 2 main things, the number 1 is that it will put the funds, all of those funds coming from various sources, into 1 account. And that account will make more transparent where everything is coming and going. Number 2, the account won't lapse from year to year, which is an important aspect, because when we're planning to do projects and you're planning to do maintenance and different things on the building, you want to be able to have the flexibility of being able to say, we have a project on the horizon, we know what the income is in the building, we know what this project is projected to cost in the next 1 to 2 years, and we can put aside the money to do so. It's also important that, and as some of the members on this committee know, and some will find out, we don't want a process which happens now where come, the end of the year, all of a sudden we have legislation or we have stuff coming up, well, you gotta get this into the budget because, it's coming to the end of the year and we wanna spend the money that we have type thing, or we're escrowing money. This will enable us to have an account and an accounting mechanism for that building to take care of that building. Now, I know the 3rd ancillary thing, let me just get to that, is that if there was people who wanted to donate money to the building in particular, they would be able to do so through this account. So that being said, the idea of the trust fund is really accountability and the ability to leverage income that we receive from the various sources from year to year without it lapsing back into the general fund. So the nice thing about this is that all of the money that would be appropriated into this building through this fund has to, unless it's from like a private donation outside, would have to be appropriated by this board. Anything that would be expended out of that account would have to be, unless it was under the $10,000 threshold, it would come to the finance committee and have to be vetted that way if you were spending money out of this account. So this really is more transparent than what we have in place now. So I know that it has been said that the building runs a deficit, and that may be true. And what we might end up seeing in this account for several years is all the money going in and all the money going out. And at the end of the year, or whenever the money's spent, it being a zero, and us having to make up that difference. That, I think, is a conversation for a different day as far as that particular problem, or you know, I think it's a side issue, because I think the main issue that I'm trying to address here is the accountability and the ability for us to be able to have a fund where the money can carry over from year to year. So those were the main reasons why I proposed this, and I'm happy to answer any questions or listen to the debate, but I know that there was some questions on that, and so I appreciate the opportunity to finally clarify those publicly.
Thank you. I would just like a statement, not so much as a question, but I couldn't agree with Alderman Clemmons more, that the Court Street Theater is an asset to this community, valuable asset. The building itself, just a little history, I think I said it before, served as a fire station at one particular time, and then repurposed, and passports added on Street of Theater. This is used by a segment of our community that, you know, maybe productions. Yes, we are building the Performing Arts Center, but some of the children and everything else may not be able to afford to perform there. So they need a venue that is adequate. And this is an adequate venue. But those of us that have gone over the years, my daughters used to take Irish step dancing within that facility at the McGonigal School of Step Dancing. That's a little plug for you, Brenda. But anyways, but the thing is, looking at the facility over the years, whatever we are doing as far as financing, we are letting that building down. It is time to have some more modern thought with this. And I think what Alderman Clemmons has proposed is a very well thought, because we were heading in the wrong direction. You're looking at the courtyard, you look at the interior of the structure, you know, there was problems with the plumbing and everything else like that. We really need to change the course. I think this will be transparent. People will be able to do comparatively to look at our investment with this. So therefore, I am full support of this measure. Thank you.
That's Alderman Lopez first.
To the chair, and if she's interested, I just wanted to ask if we could invite Director Kleinerup, if there are any questions about that.
Say that again?
Could we invite Director Kleinerup for any questions about the site or how this might be run, if needed?
Mrs. Klein?
And then I just wanted to comment, I want to express my appreciation to Alderman Clemmons for leadership in helping this get developed and helping with issues that have emerged on site. I know he's had a lot of challenges recently in terms of personal family issues, and he's still made it a priority to be in the loop and in touch. And I think it's very, very important to the community, the theater community, the Ward 4 community, the role that the Court Street Theater plays. I think we've seen as a city that lack of accountability and hands-off oversight costs us, not just the facility's presentation and sustainability and its appearance, but it's literally cost us in the past where we've tried to allowed nonprofit organizations, to manage it, and they dissolved, and we lost resources that we could have otherwise used. For myself, I know one of the first issues I tackled as in becoming alderman was the conversations around the Performing Arts Center. And as we create the Nashua Center for the Arts, which is meant to be more of an event-based format and more of an economic anchor, how do we do that while balancing the needs of the community theater and the role that it plays in our neighborhoods? And it was always assured that Court Street would be a major part of that, and that we would be putting the appropriate resources into maintaining our community theater as much as we did our economic attraction and our anchor destinations. So I have been pleased to see the mayor taking steps to do that, whether it was the development office identifying grant money and trying to make infrastructure improvements, whether it was innovative strategies through the economic development office to rent out space that was previously generating no revenue and attracting no attention. That site has really been coming alive since I became alderman, and that's saying a lot considering the impact that the pandemic had on the theater community. So I applaud Alderman Clemens for bringing this forward. I appreciate all the work that's being done to create a sustainability plan, and I think this is a very important effort that when we're done with this, all the work is really going to come from the community organizations that are organizing performances, that are engaging the public, that are marketing, and are adding to the culture and the livelihood and the economic success of our downtown. We just need to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable politically. We're making sure that there's continuity of care for this building and the facilities, and that we're not abandoning it or neglecting it. Thank you.
Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. I was eager to sign on as a supporter of this piece of legislation. This building is directly behind my building. I walk by it almost every day, but it really is quite a gem for the city, and over the years it has needed maintenance that has been fallen behind, et cetera. So I think this is a really important piece of legislation to make sure that we keep this in working order. There are a lot of really incredible community arts organizations that work right out of there. It's Symphony New Hampshire, which I was on the board of, and I've seen what it's like to try to schedule a concert in this city. So there have been implications that maybe we don't need this anymore, but each one of the theaters in our city are very busy. And the organizations which use them at a very high utilization. So the symphony's not going to suddenly be going to the Nashua Center for the Arts, and the Peacock Players are not going to be going to the Nashua Center for the Arts. They are fully booking the theaters that we have, and if you haven't been able to go and see a Peacock Player show, they're incredible, and I really encourage you to do so. So thank you for bringing this forward, Alderman Clemens. It's important for us as a city as we're continuing to say that arts is an important thing for us.
Alderman Tebow and then Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Chairman. So again, I also thank Alderman Clemens for bringing this forward. I think I mentioned before that when I was a kid, it was a children's museum, and I wish it still was to a certain extent, but I love that building. Liquid Therapy does a great job in there, and the theaters as well. I said it on the school stuff, but I feel like there's a war on our arts in the city too, right? And I don't mean it to be hyperbole, but people think because we have the PAC that the Keefe should go or Court Street should go. They're three very different venues that are all very important to the city. And to flourish in a city, you need culture, you need restaurants, you need businesses, you need arts and theater and all the different things that make people happy to go out and see and do. And especially after COVID, this is exactly what we should do. There's rumors out there that people are going to try to sell Court Street, and I would not be on board with that at all. And I've heard aldermen in this horseshoe say we would bulldoze the Keefe. Again, I'm not on board with that. We need arts in the city. If this it will get to the board, I will wholeheartedly support it. I think, to your point, Alderman Clemens, we go that way where people can donate, which is that's the part I was missing last time, is that people can actually donate to this trust fund, and it stays there. It doesn't go away, like the speaker was talking about earlier. It stays there, and we can use it. So if someone you know, if someone wanted to give, you know, $1 million or something, we would take that, right? And we would stay in there and we would use it that way, right? I mean, we'd probably take, you know, 100,000 if anybody's listening. But, you know, it stays in there, it's used for the purposes of the theater. But then, like you said, then it's the organization's goal to try to make money off it, right? I think better promotion, now that we're out of COVID, again, people can go to these things. So I think, you know, better promotion of the things that are down there. You know, now we don't have a paper, so it makes it a real newspaper, so it's harder to see what's going on. I remember papers from when I was a kid. You know, this is going on at Court Street. Here's all the movie theaters. We don't have that now, so we have to look for it. So I think we got to do a better job getting that out there once there's things that are out there. So thank you very much.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to make some comments here and then maybe ask a follow-up question. And I need to be clear. I don't support this, and it has nothing to do with local arts, and it has nothing to do with any of that. It's all about, I just heard and I listened about accountability and this, that, and the other thing. Did you know that we have 3 expendable trust funds right now, all specific to downtown? The Downtown Improvements Expendable Trust Fund, the City Buildings Expendable Trust Fund, and the Downtown Redevelopment Initiative Trust Fund. All have money in them. I don't know how much they have right now, but from what I'm seeing here as a timestamp, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars right now. And when I say that's the timestamp, I don't know what the current balances are now. But if we set up yet another, this would be a 4th trust fund for downtown improvements, that would then allow us to have to fund it. And then that would be $1 that we wouldn't put into these other trust funds specifically set aside for downtown buildings. Then we're just going to have all these dollars in all these trust funds that either we do or we don't. I would argue that we should fund the trust funds that we have and prioritize and hold ourselves accountable to make sure that Court Street Theater is acceptable for the people that use it. And my other question is about the finance. It's, from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but if we decide to take $100,000 out of one of the trust funds that I just mentioned, that would not need to go through the Finance Committee, correct? And that is my question, my comment, my question. Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Griffin, could you explain that there's some restrictions on these?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. My role here is to kind of help the process. Just trying to remember Alderman Sullivan's expendable trust funds, but let me give it a shot. The City Buildings Expendable Trust Fund, funded by appropriations. That was put in, I believe, maybe 2011, 2012. The Downtown Initiatives Trust Fund, if you recall, we sold a piece of property to Southern New Hampshire Medical, a parking lot. I believe it was about $300,000. That's what's in that fund. My understanding from Mr. Cummings, who we worked with at that time, and the mayor, was that that's not for buildings, that's for downtown initiatives, but there's probably a better description that I can come up with. The other trust fund, Downtown Improvement Committee, is that what I heard? That's been around for a while. As you may recall, a few years ago, Alderman Clemens came in with a proposal to fund that at $100,000 a year because due to the pandemic, we couldn't get over that $728,000 hurdle for parking, both meters and leases. So those are the 3. The other thing I'd like to mention, I don't have the resolution in front of me, but I think this resolution was to create an expendable trust fund for 14 Court Street through appropriations. Mm-hmm. But that's not the end of the world, because as one of the individuals that got up and spoke about this, the idea was to capture Alderman Clemmons said, that the revenue coming in, it's in a few places. You've got rental income, you've got taxable income, and the thought was, as we described a few months ago, was we'd kind of capture that. And let's say that number was 100,000 or whatever. We could offer that as a proposal, and then you, as the Board of Aldermen, would say, it's not all or nothing. It could be nothing, it could be half, it could be something, but you're building that trust fund to be used specifically for 14 Court Street. As Director Kleiner will add, the city buildings expendable trust fund, it's tough to fund. And there's a lot of needs that you all know. So this would be a case where you'd really direct the monies into the expendable trust fund. No other building has that, and this one seems to need assistance more than others. But for people who want to donate, we have to work on how that should work. You have to accept the donations if it's over a certain amount, but you can't fund an expendable trust fund that doesn't lapse with appropriations and donations together. So I just wanted to help the process there. So hopefully that answers some of the questions.
I think, Alderman Clemmons, Alderman Clee, and then I think I saw Alderman Kathy, and then Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. So my bottom line here is this, right? The money that's coming in to Court Street should stay in Court Street. And that's what this does. I don't know how you can be less or more accountable than that. And furthermore, this requires an act every time of this entire board in order to fund it. So we will create this account, and then during the budget process, the mayor will tally the amount of money that came in and out of that building, or came into that building, and out, I guess, at this point, but what came into that building, and say, okay, we have, I don't know, $100,000 that came in, let's just say, to use a round number. And that is all the money that came from rent, it came from property taxes, came from fees, all of that. And we're gonna keep that, and we're gonna put it into this fund. And then if there's an expense that we have to, this would be the place where we would go to, if there was a leak in the roof, if there was the carpet that needed to be replaced, if there was maintenance that needed to be done. This is the fund that we would go to fund that. So it's all the money coming in, and then all the money going out back into Court Street. It could not be more accountable, because every single alderman here gets a vote on how much money goes into that. So we will get a report that says, come budget time, that says this amount, the mayor is proposing this amount to put in here because that's the total number of receipts. Maybe the mayor will say the total number of receipts was 100,000, but I only want to put 50 in there. I don't know. And maybe that's what he would do. But the point is that the accountability will be there. And that's the idea. Not doing this is the opposite. Not doing this is not being transparent. If we don't do this, then we're telling the people who rent from us at Court Street and who pay fees and things like that, well, we're gonna take your money and it might be spent somewhere else. But if we do this, we're telling them, we're at least gonna keep the money that you're paying in this building. And I think that you cannot be more accountable than that. And I think we owe it to the people who pay us money every month to do that for them. And so that's why I came up with this. And I hope that I can get your support.
Just to expand, Mr. Griffin, expendable trust funds have specific ways to have money input into them, and have only specific reasons and authorizations on how they can be expended. So just because we have even $1 million in expendable trust fund, if it's only, if it was designed to only be used for certain purpose, we can't change that purpose. We can't take it out and pave streets with it or something. That's what expendable trust funds have limitations on. So, Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Chairman Dowd. I had written down a question when Mr. Griffin was speaking, and that was the question I think that was already, that Alderman Clemens had mentioned, that at the end of every year, we decide and we choose how much of that money goes into, and it could be based on the fact that we've had to pay all these other extra things, and we're only going to put a certain percentage of it into the account. Or, as I think Mr. Griffin said, 0 into the account. Each year, whatever board is here will make that decision. And for that reason alone, I think it's a good idea. And I've heard a lot of people say, much to what my colleagues here have said, well, we've got the Keefe and we've got the new Performing Arts Center. Why do we need this? So I did a little bit of homework, and I looked at Concord, and they've got the Capitol Center and the Chubb Theater, and they're both doing very well. And Manchester, even after COVID, they're coming back with the Palace and the Rex. And then I looked at Portsmouth, and Portsmouth has the Music Hall, the Seacoast Repertory Theater, the Black Box, which is the West End Studio, and 3S Art Space. And I've been to every one of these, and I can tell you they're all different. They have a different feel and vibe. 3S Art Space, if you ever get a chance, go there. It is definitely very unique. The Music Hall, I've been there for a lot of the things that they have during the summer and so on, and it brings people to here. And these particular things all happen to be in the downtown area, which is where the heart of the city is. So I think spending the money that way, it broke my heart when I heard someone say that money was going in there and then it just got lapsed into the general fund. That we shouldn't be doing. If I own 2 apartment buildings and I take all the money from one apartment building and only take care of the other apartment building, those people that are renting from me in the first apartment building aren't going to stay. And they're not going to be happy when they see the other building is being taken care of and they're being ignored. So to Alderman Clemens' point, I see the transparency in this, and I think it's a good idea. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a few comments, and then I have some questions for Mr. Griffin. Based on the report that we've seen, in the last 3 years, we've spent $689,000 on this building, and we've gotten $88,000 in revenue. And when this first came to our desk, and I don't know if this was Alderman Clemens' part of his original point, someone had said they want to make the building revenue neutral. While in theory, I don't think that that's the worst idea, I think we're a long way away from that. And if we look at the average, we're losing close to $48,000 a year on the building revenue to what we're spending. So, and we can only put in what the revenues are. So year over year, we're going to be really far away from where we need to be. It's an older building. As it ages, it'll be more expensive to fix. And so, as an alderman, I gotta look at all the angles. All the options to me have to be on the table. And so the question is it really an asset? If it is, I think we need to do more. If it's not an asset, then we need to dump it, right? Those are the things that we have to balance. And so I think that if we're really going to take care of it, if that's the goal, that's the desire, and I think that's a good desire. If it's a valuable space, we should take care of it. However, I don't think this is the best way to do it. I'm imagining a scenario where we set up a trust fund and then we don't fund it. And we don't get a lot of donations into that fund. And then the people who have counted on us as aldermen say, hey, we set up this fund, we're definitely taking care of your building, and then we definitely don't take care of their building. That's not really gonna be a great place to be in. And so I'd rather have a definitive plan. If we wanna save this building, we need to have a definitive plan to save this building and fix it the way it needs to be fixed. Now, maybe that can't be done overnight, obviously, budgets and all that, but this trust fund, with the amount of money we can put in every year, I think it's not gonna cover what we need to. And so I think we're just gonna be, going round and round the wheel. And to that point, I wanted to know if the downtown has a TIF, why couldn't the Court Street be part of that? Because that's essentially what we're doing. We're taking the revenues that we're getting and we're just putting it back into the building. Could we not then do the same thing?
That question for Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll speak to the TIF, and then I would pass the baton to Ms. Kleiner. She spends a lot of time in this building, but the TIF, what you're trying to do with the TIF is take advantage of the potential assessments going up in the area that you've got the TIF and use it in the TIF. I'm not quite sure if the library and the 14 Court Street are in the TIF. I think we looked at that, but we decided not to. And then the expansion of the TIF to include it, I think we already looked at that and didn't go forward. But the TIF is designed to capture incremental tax revenue through growth to pay for things in the TIF.
So budget, sorry, can I follow?
Follow up?
Yeah. You've obviously spent a lot of time around numbers and budgets. Is there a different way to get to the goal than establishing this trust fund? While I understand we're trying to get started, right? We want progress, we want movement forward. But could we do it differently, budgetarily?
That's where I'm gonna turn it over to Director Kleiner, because she's really taking care of this building and the progression of it and everything around it, so thank you.
Ms. Kleiner?
Thank you, Kim Kleiner. So I've heard a lot tonight. First, I want to go to a point that CFO Griffin brought up, and that's the city building fund. City building fund is for our government buildings, mainly City Hall, but it can be used for others. It's definitely not the fund to make repairs out of Court Street, although in the past we have been forced to because we've had emergency repairs. It's not the right fund for it. You have enough issues in this building that could go wrong that we need all the money we can get. And as CFO Griffin said, it's an area where we don't put in enough each budget cycle. So that does have a specific purpose. It is the mayor's the agent to expend, but having said that, anything over $25,000 goes to the Finance Committee. So ultimately, it comes to you folks. When we talk about Court Street, I think looking at the past few years, you've got a special situation. We had COVID. We shut the building down, virtually shut down. So you didn't have revenue coming into that building for well over a year. And we did have some major capital expenses. We had to put a roof on it. There was no alternative there. We had to deal with the life safety issues. Again, that's something that should have been done years ago. We are now looking at, and I want to thank the groups that have come forward. We are working with them, we're meeting, we're talking. They've been talking to people about donations, and they have a group out there. We're working with a couple residents that have stepped forward to look at new and innovative ways. This is the first time I think that we've really seen this active communication about how we fix this problem. Now, in the past 5 months, when I came to you in October, I would have told you that the revenue was 40% of the expenses. 5 months, 47 now. We're working on this. We are working on making this really revenue neutral. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but we just started. I mean, really last summer was the first time we really started putting all the groups together, meeting, talking, and seeing how we can help them and they can help us. So I'm asking, I think Alderman Clemmons has the exact idea of how this should work. We need to put this in account. We need to be held accountable to the tenants that have put their money into this. And we'll bring projects forward. You'll know about them. You'll know how much is being spent out of the fund, and you'll ultimately have control over what goes into the fund. And I'm asking lots of people to donate as well.
You have a follow-up, Alderman Kathy?
Yeah, to Mr. Griffin, if I may.
Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned the unassigned fund balance. Is that something that we could look at for help since it's unassigned, or?
That's, well, Mr. Chairman, the unassigned fund balance, we target that number, and that's looked upon favorably because as we grow the budget, the metric is the percentage of that number, 31.7 is a percentage of the budget. We've tried to keep it at about 11.4%. The assigned is for future liabilities. That's to, if we get, as Member O'Brien would say, I mean, we get hit every other year with significant increases in pension costs. It was designed for that. We fortunately haven't had to use that, but as your colleague, Alderman Jettie, kind of found out at the Capital Improvement Committee, we have like $355 million worth of bona fide projects. 9.7 million isn't going to cover that, right? So we've tried to be judicious. The other thing that when Mayor Donches came on board, we took a ride in to see our financial advisors, and what you find is savings accounts for cities of our size are looked upon very favorably. So what I mean by that is you grow systematically the unassigned. They look at that assigned fund balance for future liabilities as a very positive thing. So you got to be careful as to what you use for that. Now, any of these projects, the problem with an aging building that needs infrastructure, the renters are kind of assuming they've got a building that's going to go in there and be safe and operational and so forth. So their rent is to pay the rent of a building that's operational. So why we had to dip into the city building fund for kind of a municipal building that's combined with outside activity is we needed to do the things that Director Klein is saying. We had roof, suppression systems, et cetera. So I think this approach is to try to get the identification of rent, taxes, and fees to pay for a lot of the operational costs. It's not designed, although as you mentioned, I don't think it's going to be designed where it's going to have $500,000 in there in 3 or 4 years. It's going to have, 100, spend 80, 100, spend 80, or something like that. But through the appropriation process, you're going to know the numbers. I think Alderman Clemmons, who was kind of the author of the Downtown Improvement Committee, coupled with some of the other things he's done, we're looking at it on a calendar basis, so we know what the numbers are, and then we appropriate it in May and June. So it's you look at the historical record and then come in and appropriate it, and that's how I would recommend we do this. So that's a little bit about the financing of it.
I have other people in the queue. I've got Alderman Jettie, Alderman Clemmons, Alderman Lopez, and then Alderman Kelly. You all set?
I'll ask later, it's fine.
Alderman Jettie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, when we first started talking about this, unfortunately, Alderman Clemmons wasn't here. And so I'm glad that that he's had an opportunity to come and tell us, what he was thinking when he proposed this. And I don't know if you have reviewed the minutes of those previous meetings or looked at the replay, but I'm the one who expressed some misgivings about this. And the reason for my misgivings was that, I support this building. I support the arts. My question, my misgiving was that I couldn't understand how this was going to do anything to help this building. One of the previous meetings, I kind of simplified, my understanding of it by saying this expendable trust fund is like a piggy bank with a lock on it. And, we create the piggy bank. We haven't put anything in it yet. So each year, through the budget process, we're going to decide how much money to put into it. Once we put that money in, it stays there until it's used, on this building. And when I heard people say that, the tenants, this is the first time tonight was the first time I heard about, previous money being, disappearing. I wasn't aware of that. My understanding is that, and I think it's common knowledge, we spend far more money on this building than we receive in revenue. And my understanding also, it could be wrong, but my understanding also is that the tenants, are not paying market rent. They're paying less than market rent, which is, I have no problem with the, the artists and the actor singers, the peacock players, the people in the arts that we're trying to encourage and subsidize. I have no problem with charging them less than market rate. But it's a little insulting to me for them to say, hey, we're giving you $100 a month. Where is it? Well, you look at the money we spent on the roof. Look at the money we spent on the sprinkler system. All this other thing. I think it's clear we're spending more money on this building than we're getting. So that the tenants, their money is being used in that building. The question is, what's the long-term, how do we long-term support this building? Now, one of the things that attracted me was when it was said, well, somebody comes along and I guess we were already having groups that are starting to fundraise, which I think is great. But those fundraisers, the people donating that money, they want to make sure that it's going to a place and it's going to stay there and be used for this building. But then I hear tonight CFO Griffin saying, well, no, donations have to be handled differently. They can't be part of this same expendable trust fund. So, I want to support this building. Alderman Clemmons, I want to support his idea. Director Kleiner is saying this is the way to go. CFO Griffith seems to be saying the same thing. So I'm kind of willing to buy the piggy bank, and hopefully, we'll put some money into it and it'll achieve its long-term goal. But I want to make sure people are clear that, every year we're going to, I think at a previous meeting, CFO Griffin also said that, this rent and, whatever revenue is being generated in this building, we cannot, that's going to go into the general fund to begin with. And we're going to have to vote, as to how much money we're going to put in this expendable trust fund each year. So I want to make sure people are clear about that, and I think Alderman Clemmons has been very clear about that as well. But these donations, there's another vehicle that's going to have to be created to accept those donations and make sure that they're used for this building. So, So as we create this, I want, people, to understand, what it's doing and what it's not doing. So I guess I'm willing to support the idea of buying the piggy bank, and we'll deal with how much money to put in it later. But this is just the first step, and so,
Just for
thank you.
clarification, Mr. Griffin, the library has expendable trust funds that people have donated millions of dollars to that are sitting in there. Why can't donations go into this expendable trust fund?
That's Mr. Chairman, John Griffin. What I was going to suggest, and we kind of were in Morse code, Alderman Clemmons and I, that we were trying to turn donations into revenue. You folks accept it, we put in the expendable trust fund. You can have an expendable trust fund for the same purpose funded by donations. You just can't put them together. So my guess on the library is they're very unique, specific trust funds
Okay.
for perpetual care and other, what you can do with them, restrictions, but we can add an expendable trust fund funded by donations if the activity is like significant. I didn't know if it was somebody who's coming in and saying, here's $100 or whatever. If there's a capital campaign, that's a whole different thing.
By the way, there are quite a few expendable trust funds that, I asked Mr. Griffin if we could sit down and look at the ones that we could probably do away with. It'll have to be by legislation. Some haven't been used in decades, and we want to clear up that account, so we're going to be working on that pre-budget. Let's see, I have Alderman Clemmons, Lopez, and then Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was mistaken in saying that the donations could come in. I think what I was under the impression was exactly what the CFO said, which is if there was a capital campaign, we could accept as a resolution money and then appropriate it into the account, and it's basically a two-step process. But in any case, I appreciate what my colleague Alderman Jettie said, because this, and what I wanted to get back to was, this is a first step. So I am under no, grand illusion that the majority of the money, if not all of the money that goes in July 1st, and that will probably likely go out, and then when we come around and we're looking at the balance at the next budget, there's $1,000 in there or something. But the point is that you'll be able to see where all of the money went and have the discussion of what's going on and what the plan is. And every budget season, this budget committee, the Board of Aldermen, can look at the totality of the receipts that came in between January 1st and December 31st of the previous year and say, okay, these are all of the receipts that we received. They total $100,000. The mayor will put into his budget, I propose to put $100,000 in there. Or maybe the mayor will say, we got $100,000, but we spent 25,000 of that, so I'm gonna put in 75. Something to that degree, right? And then this committee will have that opportunity to discuss that through the budget process. And then once that happens, we'll create the budget and the money will go in the account. And again, it's a transparent process the entire way, when money goes in, when money goes out. And as far as you have, because the funds don't lapse, you have the opportunity there for somebody like Ms. Kleiner to say, we're gonna set aside 20% of that to save for the future, to try to get us to that point where we can manage this to become a fund that is a break-even account, however they do it. Maybe it'll never be that way, because we're dealing with 50% of the building, or even actually more than that. I would say 3/4 of the building is really dealing with nonprofits. The other 25% is Liquid Therapy, which is a for-profit, and they bring in about 50% probably of the revenue that comes in there, if not more. So kind of relying on them as an income generator, right, to kind of offset, but for the nonprofits in a way. But the point of the matter is that we can't create a plan unless we have a vehicle or a vessel to do so with that money, and that's sort of what this does. And so I appreciate what my colleague to the left of me just said, because it's the start of a piggy bank. And how we fill it is gonna be for further discussion of this committee and this board and future boards. And so I think with that said, again, it was never my intention to have, to think that all of a sudden all of our problems were gonna be solved. No, this is the start of a very long process.
So I have Alderman Lopez, Alderman Kelly. Do we have something new to add, or?
Yes.
I prefer to move this along. Alderman Lopez?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, we've been talking about fundraising and what we can do with the funding, but particularly having a special revenue fund to demonstrate what we do with our money and good faith. It's probably important not just to the private donors who may or may not be willing to sponsor a cause or a charity and have to be moved to that decision, but there is money set aside for arts in New Hampshire. There are different organizations that have already set aside with a plan, and it becomes a competition among proposals. And it's a pretty important part of that, of any proposal, for the city of Nashua or any partner that we have, to be able to say, and we have consistency. We maintain the building. We have a plan. We don't pull out of the emergency fund when we really have to. We have a plan for maintaining things so we don't hit emergencies. We meet here in this building, in this room, and it takes a while to get fixed. I know President Wilshire specifically made it a crusade to get the Aldermanic Chamber updated after however many years of not doing it. This is an old building too, or at least half of it is, and then there's a newer side to it. So if it's a challenge using the city buildings fund to keep City Hall in decent serviceable condition, then it's logical that Court Street Theater will be forgotten, and it consistently has been by previous administrations. To Alderman Jetty's point, this administration did fix the roof and did fix the sprinklers after many, many years of other administrations choosing not to do that. So by creating a special revenue fund and the accountability that goes with it, we are showing to people who potentially could contribute and help support in other ways that we're serious and we're gonna maintain the site. And at the same time, we're creating for ourselves the opportunity to be strategic about it, which I don't think we've had or been able to do up to this point. Alderman Clemens mentioned that the liquid therapy is still a pretty new venture and it's private money going in. We really haven't been tapping the nonprofit sectors or the charitable causes for that building at all in a formal way, but we haven't really deserved it, because you can't ask somebody to donate their money to support a building that you won't even keep the roof working on. And then finally to Alderman Kathy's suggestion about the TIF. The TIF has specifically designated areas, and the TIF does best when areas are planning on being developed in a new way. That will increase the amount of tax revenue, and then that tax revenue can support TIF items. That neighborhood, I mean, we could charge more taxes to our own library, I guess. The restaurants nearby, the Foreign Legion I don't think they need more of a burden put on them. It's not an easy neighborhood to look for the regional areas around them to improve their property values in order to fund it. We could do a TIF idea within the building, which is basically what the Special Revenue Fund says, is the better the building is doing, the more vendors we can get, the more artists we can rent to, the more we can use that giant theater that we've still yet to figure out what to do exactly with, the more we can make that building work, be sustainable, and thrive. So I think they are interconnected, and I think transparency is essential for this project, but part of that is making sure that we are keeping track of where money comes from, and we're setting at least a ritualistic obligation for us to consider Court Street Theater on an annual basis.
Alderman Kelly?
I was going to say something similar, but I was just going to repeat that this idea of having it come up during the discussion. I know that Alderman Kathy has not gone through budget season, but there's 360 something pages in the budget. And this is a very tiny community theater. So allowing them to have us look at it in a very transparent way is going to allow them to talk to us about what's going on in a way that hasn't happened before. I think it's really important. And then the other piece I was going to say was around being revenue neutral. I know Ms. Kleiner said that she'd like to see us get there. I'd love to see us get there too, but the fact of the matter is right now we're putting our money where our values are. And we've said we want to support liquid therapy, and we're going to let them have lower than market rate rent to get up and going. We're going to allow the symphony to be in there. We're going to bring in artists, studios, and let them pay less than market rate to be here. And so all of those things are us saying this is what we value. And now that we have some sprinkler systems and we have a whole big theater that we can use without the fire department, staying up till 3 in the morning, we can start to turn that corner in terms of making this revenue neutral.
Thank you.
I just have questions.
I've got Alderman Sullivan.
Okay, go ahead.
And by the way, Alderman Lopez, the new part of this building is not that new. Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we head into everything, I always ask myself, well, what happens if we do nothing? And unfortunately, I didn't get the answer to my question tonight. I think what I'd like to see, and with all due respect to Alderman Clemens, say that this is the first step. To me, I'd rather see the first step be a comprehensive plan by Director Kleiner on how we get this building in better shape, revenue neutral, so we feel confident that it's safe, and it actually is, by the definition, an asset to the city, something that at least doesn't lose money for us. I'd love to see that plan first, and then if we want to appropriate money into a trust fund, that's fine, but otherwise we're just creating something. We don't know how much we need to put in it. We don't know this, we don't know that. I'd rather have a plan first on how we get back to normal, back to revenue neutral, and then we can do other actions as needed. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, passing this doesn't preclude doing a long-term plan. You have to do short-term things and long-term things. Alderman Kathy, did you have something to add?
Just questions, actually, just for clarification. There are donations being worked on right now? No? Okay.
Well, not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Okay. I was just curious because I was like, if there were, where would those go? That would be the question. And then, long-term, if the building does become revenue neutral, do we plan on having market rates, or will it always be subsidized rates for rentals? Or do we not know? Maybe we don't know. Either one.
Director
You want to throw a dart at that board?
Director Kleiner, so a lot of our conversation, and someone stated it earlier, I think Alderwoman Kelly, has been that the building was in bad shape and bad disarray. And so was the theater. So our groups are only able to raise so much money using facilities in that type of shape. So yes, as the facility and the space can hold more and they can generate more revenue, then we can look at, can we increase those rates? As Alderwoman Kelly said, it was important to us to have liquid therapy in there, and to create a situation where they could thrive. That contract and that lease ends next year, and then they start paying some market rent. We brought in the new lease for the small room, what some of us call a closet, but
Yeah.
and that has a lease attached to it and an increase in taxes. So we just did that. We're looking at how we utilize other space. One of the things I want to say is when we look at the Court Street, and we shared with you some of our expenses, we're estimating the value of the maintenance men that we send to Court Street. And so that's what you're seeing offset some of that revenue. When we do that here or in the budgets, we don't estimate the value of those personnel to City Hall, to Public Health, to the Performing Arts Center. So that's just an estimate. And I want to be careful about when you look at that expense, right? I think that we are trying to be very transparent in what it could possibly cost, but that's not necessarily exactly what it costs. So as we start to look at a long-term plan and even a short-term plan, we're gonna look at the revenue, we're gonna look at the expenses, and how both need to be brought into an adjustment.
Can I get one small, quick question? What would it cost to make a plan for the building? As we're heading into budget season.
Consultant?
I feel like that's literally
Kim Kleiner, I think we could look at a consultant, I think, but what we've done so far is we've put together this group. We have a resident who's very familiar in project management that's working with us for the first time. We also have had a property condition report done on the building, so we're pretty sure of what the expenses and the repairs are that are needed. I'm not sure that I would suggest going to a paid consultant as of yet. I would give this group under the leadership of this resident who has stepped forward to assist a little bit of time.
All set? I'd like to just point out a few things and making notes as I was going along. Not in any particular order, but first of all, the fire station, if we hadn't added on to it, would probably be set up for a historic district building. It was the main fire station back as far as when they had horses. And the horses used to be up in Greeley Park, and we're still using those buildings, at least for another few months. And I'm not gonna make any comments about you and
I knew the horses.
yeah, so I mean, that building goes a long way back in Nashua history, and it is kind of an important building. Years ago, when we first started talking about the Performing Arts Center and the new middle school, as part of the plans for Elm Street was an addition onto the auditorium to make Elm Street Auditorium more usable for events. That's still on a drawing board, and we're trying to figure out what to do with Elm Street as a whole. But at the time, Alderman McCarthy and I had a discussion about Court Street, and the Performing Arts Center was never going to be in a position to have the people from Court Street use that facility for a number of reasons, which I'm not gonna get into, but, and we talked about the fact that if the Board of Aldermen wanted to spend the money, building a small theater at Elm Street to go along with a larger theater where these younger people could perform. They don't need that large auditorium. The younger kids I'm talking about, junior act the singers, peacock players. And I can tell you from experience, because my daughters have been in act the singers, and they're all over 40 now, so that was a while ago. And I can tell you from personal experience that people that performed at Court Street went on to professional careers in singing, in musicians, in actors on Hollywood, and they're doing that today. And they all got their start on Court Street. That's as important as our high schools, where we've had people go on to be professional athletes. Greg Landry, who I went to school with, was quarterback for the Lions. Coley Eiley, and others that have gone on to play professional football. Others that have gone on to play successful college basketball. But this is, in the arts, these young kids get a start at doing things. Like my granddaughter now started with Act the Singers, who performed in many shows before the pandemic at Court Street. And now she's singing solos as part of the music program at Pennachuck Middle School. And she wants to become a professional singer, actor, dancer, whatever. So I think that's very important, and I think that unless in the long-term plan, we decide we're gonna build a small theater when we do everything at Elm Street, which is, A, doesn't happen overnight, and B, is an expense, as you can well imagine. I think that we need to maintain Court Street for the youth of Nashua. Now, I've heard people say we haven't had any performances in the last 2 years. The building was closed. And trust me, the kids that were part of Act the Singers were home moping.
Good advantage.
They want to be in the shows. And they're just starting to have their new shows now. So, you know, I think we owe it to the youth of Nashua to preserve this theater. Now, is this expendable trust the overall answer to the whole question? No. But it is a way to sort of earmark money for this project. Some of these other expendable trust funds that were mentioned were earmarked for specific areas. And you can't start, you know, taking money from, you know, this one to put in that one because the legislation doesn't allow it. So, I'm in favor of passing this, and if there's no further discussion, I'd like to call the question. So the motion on the floor is for final passage of establishing an expendable trust fund for Court Street expenses funded by appropriations. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman at-large Laurie Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan.
No.
Alderman at-large Shoshana Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy.
No.
Alderman at-large Michael O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 yeas, 2 nays. Motion carries.
Okay. Any general discussion? Seeing none. Public comment? Name and address for the record.
My name's Jen Morton. I'm actually a resident of Amherst, but I am the secretary of the board of Peacock Players. And I'd like to really thank you for supporting the children of Nashua with this vote to establish this fund. We are looking forward to being in Court Street for a long time. Peacock Players has been in that building since we were incorporated in 2003. We do benefit from the lower rent as a nonprofit. It's really the only way we've survived through the years, especially through the past 2 years of the pandemic. So we really appreciate the city's confidence and support of the children in Nashua. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Amy McKay, 5 Bennington Road. On behalf of Nashua Theater Guild, we'd like to thank you. We'd like to thank Alderman Clemens and Alderman Lopez for helping and continuing to work with us. We'd like to thank all of the aldermen for voting yes. Thank you very much. It really means a lot to us. And we will continue to work on this building to improve it, to continue to bring the community into Nashua from surrounding areas. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, remarks by Alderman? I think I saw Alderman Cathy first.
Ladies
Kelly.
first.
Oh, you can go first.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, let's see you and sit.
No, after you. No, after you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am no stranger to the arts. I actually did theater well into my adult life and actually worked on feature films in LA. So my vote had nothing to do with arts and more to do with, I don't think, in my opinion, my personal opinion, this solves a problem that we need to solve. I'd like to see it solved a different way. And so that's why I voted no. I definitely support the arts. And I hope that the kids have a place to go. I just don't know if this trust fund does what we need it to. Thank you.
Lynn Kelly?
Thank you. I just want to thank the committee. We did a lot of good for the youth of Nashua tonight, passing both the teacher's contract and the suspendable trust fund. I actually just missed my final bite at the apple in terms of the teacher contract, and I wanted to bring up Mrs. McCark's comments and how strongly they resonated with me. You know, she really talked about, you know, I've been here for this many years. I have 2 advanced degrees and I'm barely going to make $80,000. So I think, I don't like to talk about big national policies, but I think for a long time we've allowed that to happen. And, you know, teachers having a passion or having a calling, and all due respect to you, Alderman Lopez, but saying that's a reason that we can pay them less money is not, it's just not okay. They are investing in our future as educators, and it's really important that we show that. And I know that that's a long way coming, and it's going to be slow steps, but I wanted to say that because I think it's really important, so thank you. Oh, and the Energy and Environment Committee is having our Sustainability Town Hall tomorrow evening, 5:30. It is in honor of Earth Day, but also just an update from Doria Brown, as well as a few of our department heads in terms of the things that we've been doing as a city. So please come. We'll go here, and then we'll be here for our meeting.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderwoman at Large Kelly reminded me of something that I wanted to say about the teachers. You know, I was at a BOE meeting, I don't know, a month ago, and one of the parents turned around and told the teachers, "You're a teacher. You're supposed to be getting less money than everybody else." And you know, that's the wrong thing to think. It's the wrong way to be, and that's what I meant when I said war on teachers, parents trying to take control of what teachers do. And what they do is something that parents can't do, otherwise we'd all be homeschooling. They go to school for it. And, you know, I trust the teachers with my children, the public teachers, I do. Private schools are great too, but at the end of the day, a lot of our kids are in public schools, and I think it's important that we supported them, and I'm glad that we did tonight.
Yeah, I've always been a proponent that teachers are underpaid. We've always had to work within the constraints of what we have for a budget and what we can afford, but the teachers have always definitely been underpaid. I have 2 daughters that are teachers. I have my sister was a teacher. My brother was a principal of St. Thomas Aquinas in Dover and a teacher. And I can go back and even further in the family. They're all associated with education or teachers. And so, you know, I think the teachers deserve this increase. And it's very important that we support education. It adds so much to the city, and everything from real estate values to having our students learn and go out and become productive citizens beyond the halls of Nashua. So I'm glad that we took the action we did tonight. Alderman O'Brien, do you have a motion?
Yes, I do. I would like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
Motion is to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Alderman Elijah Larry Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Elijah Shoshana Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy.
Yes.
Alderman Elijah Michael O'Brien votes yea. Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Yes.
You have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. We're adjourned at 9:28 p.m. Thank you, everyone.